Listen, I want you to hear me on this, because this could be the one thing that changes everything for you. Focus is the new superpower. Not hustle, not working harder, not trying to do it all at once. Focus. Here's the truth: most of us aren't failing because we're not capable. We're failing because we're distracted. We live in a world that is designed to pull your attention in 1,000 different directions. Notifications, endless scrolling, constant noise. And every single time you give in, every single time you let yourself drift, you're trading your future for a momentary hit of comfort. That's the cost. But when you decide to focus, really focus, you unlock something that most people never touch. You create momentum. You create progress. You start to see yourself follow through. And the moment you prove to yourself that you can shut out the noise and do the thing you said you'd do, that's when you start to trust yourself again. That's when everything shifts. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to map out the next 10 years. You just need to take one thing and commit to it with your full attention. 5 minutes of real focus beats 5 hours of half engaged effort every single time. And when you stack those minutes, when you repeat that discipline day after day, your life starts to look radically different. This is not about being perfect. It's about making a decision right now that you will no longer be at the mercy of distraction. You will no longer let the world decide where your attention goes. You're in charge. And when you claim that power, when you own your focus, you become unstoppable. So here's my challenge to you: the next time you feel pulled in 100 directions, stop. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what matters most right now? And then do just that, nothing else. That's how you build the muscle. That's how you rise above the noise. That's how you step into the version of yourself you've always known is in there. Focus is the new superpower, and you already have it. All you need to do is use it. Listen, I'm going to tell you something that you probably already know deep down, but you keep brushing off because it feels too simple to be true. Distraction is the real enemy. Not lack of talent, not lack of opportunity, not even lack of time. It's distraction. And until you get brutally honest about how distraction is stealing your potential, you're going to stay stuck in the same cycle of wanting more, but never getting there. Think about it. How many times have you set out to do something important? Study for that exam, work on that project, start that business idea, or even just clean out a drawer. And within minutes, you've somehow ended up scrolling on your phone, checking email, or getting lost in the never-ending black hole of just one more thing. That's not a character flaw. That's not laziness. That is distraction, and it is engineered to hijack your brain. We live in a world designed to pull your focus away from what matters. There are entire teams of scientists and designers working for social media companies, streaming platforms, and advertisers whose full-time job is to figure out how to keep you hooked. That little ding from your phone, that red notification bubble, the autoplay feature on Netflix, none of that is an accident. It's deliberate. It's engineered to grab your attention, to suck you back in, to make you feel like you're missing something if you don't check it right now. And every single time you give in, you're handing over your power. You're letting distraction win. Now, here's the kicker: the cost of distraction is invisible. You don't see it the way you see a bill in your mailbox. But it's there, and it's massive. Every time you interrupt yourself, every time you let your attention splinter, you lose momentum. You break your concentration. You stop that magical flow state that allows you to actually produce your best work. And once it's broken, it takes forever to get back into it. Research shows it can take over 20 minutes to refocus after even a tiny distraction. 20 minutes gone because you couldn't resist checking a text. That's the silent tax you're paying every single day. Distraction also chips away at something deeper, your confidence. Because every time you set an intention and then let yourself get pulled away, You reinforce the story that you can't rely on yourself. You're teaching your brain that you don't keep your promises, that you're not in control. And that's dangerous. Because confidence isn't about being loud or fearless. Confidence is built in the quiet moments when you prove to yourself that you can do what you said you'd do. Distraction robs you of that proof. Here's the good news. Once you start to see distraction for what it really is, the enemy, you can fight back. You can take your power back. And the way you do it is not by eliminating all the noise in the world. You can't. The world isn't going to get quieter. The apps aren't going to stop buzzing. Life isn't going to suddenly become distraction-free. The way you win is by building the muscle of awareness and choice. By catching yourself in the moment when you're about to slip and asking, is this what matters right now? That one pause is a game changer. The truth is, you don't need more time. You don't need a productivity app or some miracle morning routine. You need focus. And focus is nothing more than the discipline to resist distraction long enough to follow through. That's it. The people you admire, the ones who seem unstoppable, the ones who are writing the books, building the companies, getting in shape, crushing their goals, they're not smarter than you. They're not more talented than you. They've just mastered the ability to direct their attention on what matters and protect it from everything else. And here's the part that should fire you up. You already have everything you need to do this. You don't need to learn some fancy new skill. You don't need to wait until next month or next year. You just need to decide that you're no longer going to let distraction run the show. You're going to be the one in charge. You're going to be the one who says, no, I'm not going to check my phone right now. No, I'm not going to get sucked into this rabbit hole. I'm doing the thing I said I'd do. It's not about perfection. You're still going to slip. We all do. The point is not to never get distracted. The point is to catch it faster and come back stronger. Every time you do, you're building resilience. You're training your brain to trust you again. And over time, that trust compounds into confidence, into momentum, into results. So let me ask you, how much longer are you going to let distraction steal your future? How much longer are you going to keep handing over your focus to a screen, to someone else's agenda, to noise that doesn't matter? Enough. This is your wake-up call. This is the moment you draw the line. Distraction is the enemy, and the only way to beat it is to recognize it, resist it, and redirect your focus back to what matters most. Because once you do that, once you start reclaiming those little pockets of time and energy that distraction has been stealing from you, you'll realize something powerful. You're not behind. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You've just been scattered. And when you take back your focus, you take back your life. All right, let's go deeper into this, because key number 2 is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your life. Focus builds trust with yourself. And I want you to sit with that for a moment, because at first it doesn't sound like much. But when you really understand it, it changes everything. See, most people think confidence comes from achievements. They think it's about crushing goals, having success, standing on a stage, getting the promotion, losing the weight, building the business. And sure, those things feel great, but that's not where real confidence is born. Real confidence is built in private, in the little moments when nobody's watching, when it's just you and the choice you're about to make. It's built when you say you'll do something, and then you actually do it. That's where the trust comes from. And that trust in yourself is the foundation of confidence. Now, here's the problem. Most of us are constantly breaking that trust without even realizing it. We tell ourselves, I'll get up early tomorrow. We hit snooze. I'll start eating better this week. We grab the bag of chips. I'll sit down and finally work on that thing. We end up scrolling, binge, watching, cleaning the kitchen, anything but the thing. And every single time we do this, we send a message to our own brain. You can't count on me. That's brutal, isn't it? Because think about your relationships. Trust is everything. If someone constantly breaks their word to you, if they keep promising and not following through, you stop believing them. You don't rely on them. You don't feel safe with them. Well, the exact same thing happens inside of you. If you don't keep your promises to yourself, if you keep letting distraction win, your brain stops believing you. And that's why you feel stuck. That's why you doubt yourself. That's why you keep hesitating. But here's the flip side, and this is where focus comes in. Every single time you catch yourself about to drift, and you redirect your attention back to the thing you said you'd do, you're not just getting something done. You're proving to yourself that you can be trusted. You're showing yourself that your word means something. And that is the foundation of unshakable confidence. Let me give you an example. Imagine you decide that today you're going to spend 30 minutes writing that report. You close the tabs, silence the phone, and actually do it. When those 30 minutes are over, sure, you've got a chunk of writing done. But what's even more important is that deep down, you've sent a signal to your brain. I can count on myself. The next time you set a goal, you'll feel stronger. You'll hesitate less. You'll believe a little more. And that belief builds on itself. That's how momentum starts. And listen, it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be life-changing overnight. In fact, it's not supposed to be. Trust isn't built in one grand gesture. It's built in repetition, in small wins, in the daily grind of showing up. Think about it like building a muscle. You don't walk into the gym once, lift a heavy weight, and then suddenly you're strong for life. No, you go again and again. You build gradually. You show up consistently. And eventually, that consistency becomes who you are. So how do you start? Simple, pick one small promise you're going to keep today. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning. It could be writing for 10 minutes. It could be leaving your phone in another room for half an hour while you focus on one task. The point is not what you choose. The point is that you follow through. Because every time you do, you're stacking evidence in your own mind that you can be trusted. And here's the beauty of it. When you trust yourself, you stop waiting for permission. You stop looking for external validation. You stop overthinking. Because you know deep down, if I say I'll do it, I will. That belief in yourself makes you unstoppable. You'll start taking bigger risks. You'll start tackling bigger goals. Not because you're fearless, but because you've built a foundation of self-trust strong enough to carry you through the fear. So if you've been feeling stuck, if you've been doubting yourself, if you've been wondering why you can't seem to make progress, look at your focus. Ask yourself honestly, am I following through on the small promises I make to myself? Because if you're not, that's where you need to start. Not with a giant to-do list, not with some new life plan, with one small commitment honored with your full focus. And the moment you do, the moment you prove to yourself that you're capable of shutting out distraction and following through, you'll feel it. A spark, a shift. That's trust being rebuilt. And that, my friend, is the secret to confidence. Not achievements, not applause, not perfection. Focus. Focus that builds trust. Trust that builds confidence. Confidence that builds a life you're proud of. All right? Let's talk about this one, because it's a game changer if you let it sink in. Small, deep focus beats scattered effort every single time. And I mean every time. Most people walk around with this belief that productivity is about doing more hours, more tasks, more hustle. And because of that, they're constantly exhausted, constantly busy, constantly overwhelmed. And yet they're not moving forward. Why? Because their effort is scattered. Their energy is split. They're doing 10 things at once, giving each one 10%, and then wondering why nothing ever gets finished. Let me tell you the truth, success doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing what matters most with your full attention. You don't need to pour hours upon hours into something to make progress. You need concentrated effort, the kind where you shut everything else out and give one thing your undivided focus. That's where the magic happens. That's where breakthroughs happen. That's where you start to surprise yourself. Think about it. How many times have you had a day where you were busy, from morning until night, emails, errands, calls, little tasks, but at the end of the day, you couldn't point to one thing that truly mattered that you finished? That's scattered effort, and it feels productive in the moment, but it's an illusion. It's motion without progress. On the flip side, how many times have you locked in, even for just 20 or 30 minutes, and actually finished something important? That one pocket of deep focus outweighed an entire day of being busy. That's the difference. And here's the science behind it. Your brain isn't designed to multitask. You think you are, but you're not. Every time you switch from one task to another, check your phone, glance at an email, respond to a text, you're forcing your brain to stop, shift gears, and then start again. It's called context switching, and it kills your productivity. You're not just losing seconds, you're losing momentum. And the more you do it, the shallower your work becomes. But when you commit to deep focus, even for a short burst, you bypass all of that. You give your brain the space to sink into what psychologists call flow. Flow is that state where time disappears, distractions fade, and you're completely absorbed in what you're doing. That's when your best ideas come. That's when your creativity spikes. That's when your efficiency skyrockets. And here's the kicker: it doesn't take hours to get there. Sometimes it only takes 15 or 20 minutes of uninterrupted focus. This is why I say 5 minutes of deep focus beats 5 hours of half engaged effort. Because those 5 minutes are real. They're intentional. They create momentum you can build on. And once you prove to yourself you can focus deeply for 5 minutes, you can stretch it to 10, then 20, then an hour. Before you know it, you've trained yourself to work with intensity, not just duration. And listen, I get it. You've got a million things on your plate. You've got responsibilities, interruptions, people who need you. You can't always shut the world out for hours at a time. But you don't need hours. You need pockets of deep, intentional focus. You can carve those out. Maybe it's 30 minutes before the house wakes up. Maybe it's a lunch break. Maybe it's 10 minutes in your car before you walk into the next meeting. Those pockets matter more than you realize. What if, instead of trying to do everything at once, you chose one thing and gave it everything for a small window of time? What if you treated those small bursts of focus like sacred appointments, non-negotiable, untouchable? That's how you get real traction. That's how you finally start finishing instead of just starting. That's how you start stacking wins. And here's the beautiful part: deep focus is a skill. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes. At first, your brain will resist. You'll itch to check your phone. You'll think of 10 other things you should be doing. That's normal. Push through. Train the muscle. Over time, you'll find that it gets easier to drop in, to stay locked in, and to get more done in less time. So the next time you catch yourself trying to juggle 10 things at once, stop. Remind yourself scattered effort looks busy, but it doesn't build anything. What builds your future is those small, focused bursts of attention that you protect fiercely. That's where the progress is. That's where the breakthroughs live. Small, deep focus beats scattered effort every single time. And when you start to believe that, when you start to practice it, your life will look completely different. Because you'll stop wasting your energy on shallow motion, and you'll start channeling it into meaningful momentum. And that's the difference between being busy and actually building the life you want. Here's what I mean by that. Most of us dramatically overestimate what we can do in a day and wildly underestimate what we can do in a year. We want instant results. We want to see massive change overnight. And when it doesn't happen fast enough, we quit. That's the trap. But real growth doesn't happen in sudden bursts. It happens in layers, in reps, in the quiet, boring, unglamorous consistency of showing up. That's where the magic is. Think about money for a second. If you save just a little bit every day, it doesn't look like much in the beginning. It feels almost pointless. But give it time, let it build, and then compounding kicks in. Small amounts grow into something massive because you stuck with it. Focus works the exact same way. Every time you choose to block out distraction and concentrate, you're making a tiny deposit into your future. One by itself doesn't feel life-changing, but stack them day after day, week after week, and you've got something powerful. Here's the truth. Consistency is boring. It's not flashy. Nobody claps for you when you sit down to write another page, when you go for another workout, when you read another chapter instead of scrolling. Nobody sees it. But consistency doesn't care about applause. It's building something bigger in silence. It's rewiring your brain. It's training your body. It's stacking proof that you can be counted on. And here's the kicker, the results always lag behind the effort. That's why most people give up too soon. They plant seeds and then walk away before they sprout. They don't trust the process. But compounding is invisible at first. Nothing seems to be happening. You're showing up, you're focusing, and you're not seeing the results you want yet. That's the point where most people quit. But if you can push through that phase, if you can keep showing up even when you don't feel like it's working, that's when you cross the threshold. That's when the exponential growth kicks in. Think about a tree. For years, roots are growing underground where nobody can see. It looks like nothing's happening. Then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, the tree bursts through the soil. But it wasn't out of nowhere. It was the quiet, invisible consistency beneath the surface. Your focus works exactly the same way. Every time you choose to put in the reps, every time you sit down and do the work, even when it feels small, you're growing roots. And this is where most people sabotage themselves. They chase intensity instead of consistency. They go all in for a week, trying to change everything at once, and then burn out. But intensity fades, consistency lasts. It's not about going hard once in a while. It's about showing up over and over, even on the days you don't feel like it. Especially on the days you don't feel like it. Here's what's really exciting: consistency compounds, not just in results, but in identity. Every time you keep showing up, you're not just building progress. You're becoming the kind of person who shows up. That shift in identity is priceless. Because once you start to believe, I'm someone who follows through, I'm someone who focuses, I'm someone who keeps going, you stop fighting with yourself. It becomes who you are. And I know what you're thinking. But what if I've been inconsistent my whole life? What if I always start and stop? Here's the good news: compounding doesn't care about your past. It only cares about what you do today. One choice to focus, one act of consistency starts a new chain. And when you stack enough of those, the past doesn't matter anymore. What matters is the direction you're building now. So how do you harness the power of compounding? Start small. Too many people set goals that are too big and unsustainable, and then they beat themselves up when they can't keep it going. Forget massive leaps. Focus on tiny steps, repeated. 10 minutes of deep focus. One paragraph written, one workout, one call made. Do it consistently, because here's the truth: consistency beats intensity every single time. Let me leave you with this: the life you want isn't built in one dramatic breakthrough. It's built in the quiet, consistent choices you make when no one's watching. It's built in the discipline of focus, stacked over time. And one day, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. And it won't be because of one big moment. It'll be because you chose to show up again and again, until the compounding kicked in. Consistency compounds. That's not just a principle. It's a superpower. And once you embrace it, there's nothing you can't build. I want you to really let that land. You are in control, not your phone, not your inbox, not the people demanding your time, not the endless stream of notifications designed to hijack your brain. You. Your attention is yours, and where you direct it decides the quality of your life. Most people live as if their attention is up for grabs. They wake up, grab the phone, and immediately let the outside world set the tone for the day. The email dictates the priorities. The news dictates the mood. Social media dictates the self-worth. And then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed, scattered, anxious, behind. It's because they've handed over the steering wheel. They've surrendered control of their most valuable asset, their focus. Here's the truth: your attention is your life. Whatever you focus on grows. Whatever you feed with your energy gets stronger. If you give your attention to distraction, you feed distraction. If you give it to fear, you feed fear. But if you choose to give your attention to growth, to progress, to the things that matter most, you feed the future you want. That choice is always in your hands, moment by moment. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, because let's be real, the world is noisy. Your brain is wired to respond to novelty and stimulation, and technology knows exactly how to exploit that wiring. That's why it feels so hard to resist the pull of your phone, or the urge to check one more thing. But here's the empowering part. You're not powerless. You have a pause button. You have the ability to stop, notice what's happening, and redirect your attention. That's the muscle we're talking about building. And here's why it matters so much. When you don't control your attention, you're living reactively. You're always responding to what the world throws at you instead of creating what you want. That's why you feel drained at the end of the day. That's why it feels like you're always busy, but not making progress. Because you've been living on someone else's agenda. But when you take control of your attention, everything shifts. You move from reactive to intentional. You stop being a passenger and you start driving. Think about it: every breakthrough you've ever had, every meaningful accomplishment, started with a decision to direct your attention toward it. You had to choose to focus, even if just for a little while. Nobody handed that to you. You did it, and you can do it again. So how do you take control? Start by noticing. Awareness is the first step. Catch yourself when you're drifting, when you're mindlessly scrolling, when you're bouncing from task to task. Ask, is this what I want to give my attention to right now? That one question can stop the autopilot. And then choose. Choose to redirect your attention to what actually matters. It could be as simple as finishing the email you started. It could be as profound as finally working on that dream you've been avoiding. The point is, you choose. And here's the beautiful thing. The more you practice this, the stronger you get. At first, it feels like you're constantly losing control, constantly fighting distraction. That's normal. But every time you catch yourself and pull your attention back, you're strengthening that muscle. Over time, you'll find it easier to lock in, easier to say no to distractions, easier to live in alignment with what matters most to you. The moment you realize your attention is yours to command, life gets simpler. You stop trying to do everything. You stop drowning in noise. You start focusing on the things that truly move the needle. And that clarity feels like freedom, because it is. So let me ask you, who's in charge right now? You or your distractions? Because you get to decide. You can keep giving your attention away, or you can claim it back and direct it where it belongs. And when you choose the latter, you reclaim not just your focus, but your future. You are in control of your attention. Don't ever forget that. That's your power. That's your leverage. That's your superpower. Here's the hard truth: most people don't take action, not because they're lazy, not because they don't want change, but because they overcomplicate the hell out of everything. They spend so much time planning, perfecting, mapping out 10 steps ahead, worrying about all the what-ifs, that they never actually move. Paralysis by analysis is real, and it's killing your momentum. Your brain loves to trick you into thinking that complexity equals progress. That if you make a giant to-do list, if you highlight color code and map out every single angle, then you're productive. But that's just mental busy work. You're not moving. You're preparing to move. And preparation without execution is just procrastination in disguise. That's why simplicity is so powerful. When you strip away the noise, when you stop trying to do 100 things at once, and you ask yourself one simple question, what matters most right now? Suddenly the path becomes clear. That one question cuts through overwhelm like a knife. It gives you direction, and direction sparks action. Think about how your brain works under pressure. When there's chaos, when you're juggling too much, you freeze. But when you get crystal clear on the next step, the one thing that actually matters, you calm down, you lock in, you move forward. That's why pilots in an emergency don't try to solve 10 problems at once. They focus on the next right action. That's how they land the plane. That's how you move through life too. Here's the thing about action: it thrives on clarity. The simpler the focus, the easier it is to start. And starting is everything, because once you start, you generate momentum. And momentum is what carries you through the resistance, the fear, the doubt. But you'll never get momentum if you're drowning in complexity. So let's make this real. If you've been putting off writing that book, stop worrying about chapters and structure and publishing. Just write one paragraph today. If you've been avoiding exercise, stop designing the perfect program. Do 10 push-ups right now. If you've been delaying that business idea, stop sketching out the 5-year plan. Make one call. Take one step. That's simplicity in action. And here's what's wild: those small, simple actions compound. They build trust with yourself. They create momentum. They shift your identity. Before you know it, the thing that once felt impossible starts to feel inevitable. Not because you had the perfect plan, but because you simplified enough to start moving. Let's be clear, simplicity doesn't mean easy. It doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It means you stop complicating the first step. You stop making it harder than it has to be. You remove the friction between intention and action. And when you do that, you realize something powerful: you're not stuck. You've just been standing in your own way with too much noise. And the best part, simplicity is available to you right now. You don't need permission. You don't need to wait. You just need to ask yourself, what matters most in this moment? And then do only that. Not 10 things, not 5 things. 1. The thing that moves the needle, the thing that actually matters. Do that and you'll feel lighter. You'll feel clearer. You'll feel momentum kicking in. And once momentum is on your side, you become unstoppable. Because simplicity leads to action. Action leads to consistency, and consistency leads to results. That's the chain. That's the formula. So the next time you feel stuck, the next time you're overwhelmed by everything you should be doing, stop, breathe, ask the question. Pick one thing, do it. That's how you move forward. That's how you take control.